You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. At moments of crisis like the one our country's going through, what with the government shut down for a record length of time, and yet masses of people are camping out at the border, trying to still get into the place that to them is the miracle of opportunity and safety and peace. Well, at moments like this, history is both cautionary and heartening. It's cautionary and not a little depressing, because we have been here before, and unless we do study what happened, we are doomed, as the saying goes, to repeat it. But it's heartening, too, because we've been here before, and we did survive it, even with many mistakes, unnecessary sacrifices and cruelties, and gratuitous losses. But we do have a chance to study it, and we do have a chance not to repeat it. You can't say that in a generalized way about almost any other previous mistakes. The past comes alive in a part of history that has, amazingly enough, never been studied or written about before: the mass exodus in flight of a population of a city as highly cultured, famous, energetic, and world-centric as New York is today. It comes alive in what happened to that population that fled, and its diaspora across the world. It comes alive in a book we're going to talk about in just a while. I promise you, you will be fascinated. But before we get to that, and to the surrealism corner, and of course at the end fighting words, we need to go inside today's headlines. Well, Trump shut down the United States. His already almost a month-long shutdown has broken the historical record for government shutdowns. The impact, as usual, was felt first by the poorest and those most in need of government attention and assistance. But now the middle class is beginning to feel it, with no paycheck furloughs, layoffs both temporary and permanent, and the economy is suddenly screeching its brakes as it moves into a skid. TSA employees have decided they just don't want to work without pay, so they're staying home, which makes flying hazardous, as is eating meat or fish now hazardous, since inspectors are shut out. Drinking water or eating vegetables, that's hazardous. No EPA inspectors. Getting prescriptions for new medications filled, no FDA shut down. Laboratories run by NASA are shuttered. Research is frozen. The Smithsonian Institution is asleep, and the Secret Service itself is currently protecting Trump for free, no salary. If I were Trump, that would make me nervous. Meanwhile, the dysfunctional republic staggers on. 31,000 members of the Los Angeles Teachers Union are on strike. The judiciary is again fighting back against Trump's ongoing attempted destruction of our laws. 2 judges, one in California and the other a district court judge in Pennsylvania, have blocked Trumpian rules that nationwide would have allowed employers who have religious or moral objections to opt out of the no-cost coverage requirement of the Affordable Care Act. Both judges agreed to pause the rule while legal challenges are argued, halting for now, at least, the erosion tactic of Trump's edict just before it was to take effect. Republican leadership in Congress, possibly stirring awake after the long sleep spell Trump cast on them, stripped Representative Steve King of Iowa from all his committee assignments, including judiciary, for his most recent in a lifelong series of odious racist and sexist comments. They did not censure him. Oh, God forbid they should do something as wildly extreme as that. But why they acted now and not years ago is a mystery, since his virulent racist and sexist positions are hardly new but go back well before 2002. 11 Republicans in the Senate also surprised their colleagues, and probably themselves, by voting with the Democrats on Senate Minority Leader Schumer's proposal to reject Trump's plan to reduce sanctions on Russian oligarchs. Such signs of life from the GOP could be the surfacings of microscopic principles, or else just proverbial rodents starting to desert the sinking poles of Trump. And it turns out that Opus Dei, the extreme arch-conservative Catholic order, paid $977,000 to settle a 2002 sexual misconduct claim against John McCloskey, a prominent conservative priest who had successfully engineered the conversions of such big-name right-wingers as Newt Gingrich, Larry Kudlow, and Sam Brownback. On the academic front, John Engler, president of Michigan State University, has attracted some outrage over his comments that the women who were abused by Lawrence Nassar, you remember him, the former faculty member and ex-doctor for the U.S. national gymnastics team, well, those women, according to Engler, seem to be enjoying the spotlight. Nor is it the first time that Engler's been caught in an antagonistic remarks toward Nassar's literally hundreds of accusers. But there's good folks on some campuses. The last vestige of the so-called Silent Sam statue were removed from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill campus at the direction of the school's chancellor, Carol Folt. She authorized the removal of the statue's base, the statue had already gone. The base bore plaques honoring university students who had fought for the Confederacy. The statue itself, a Confederate soldier clutching his rifle but considered silent because he lacks ammunition, that was torn down by protesters in August, followed by clashes between them and counter-protesters draped in Confederate flags. Chancellor Folt apologized last October on behalf of the university for the profound injustices of slavery. That's her quote. And she outlined back then a plan for a new building that would include the statue and other more accurate artifacts. But the Board of Governors rejected her plan, and now Carol Folt has suffered a new backlash from the administrators, and she's announced she's going to resign at the end of the academic year. That's the university's loss. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with my guest and her groundbreaking, first-of-a-kind book. And coming right up, the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we are back and on our way into the Surrealism Corner. Well, the Surrealism Corner is different this week. It has only one item in it, plus a footnote. The one item, however, is so awesome, and that's both in the way a 7-year-old might say, wow, cool, awesome, and in the way a 700-year-old mystic, if there were such a thing, might say, awesome. So, the one item is about the neuroscience of empathy. Okay, we are all in agreement that we need a lot more empathy these days among individuals, among nations. It would just be good to have a whole rainstorm of empathy across the planet. So, Dr. Helen Rice, who is an associate clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, was quoted at some length in the New York Times recently about the neuroscience of empathy. What is it? And her reply follows. It really began with the advent of neuroimaging, to look at people's brains when they were observing other people in pain or in distress. It really caused an explosion of information in the science world. The exciting discovery was that when we observe other people in pain, our own pain centers actually get activated. If anybody has watched somebody cut themselves, we experience these things happening even though nothing has touched us. The neuroscience of empathy showed us that we both have cognitive appraisals when other people are experiencing emotions, and we also have affective or emotional responses. The emotional ones are the resonance that we feel when other people are experiencing other intense emotions, and that is what they call the fast road. We experience that very quickly. Whereas the cognitive understanding and ability to get the perspective of others is a slower road. The first is about 50 milliseconds, and the cognitive is about 500. When people are performing compassionate acts, the area of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is the reward center, gets activated. That's partially why we feel good when we're helping others. That's the end of what the New York Times quoted from Dr. Helen Rice. I just think it's fascinating that we get rewarded chemically by our brain when we help others, and that it travels faster than the cognitive, which is trying to figure out, are people really in pain when they're, for example, being lynched, raped, or stuck at the border. Wow. And that's not even counting what we have learned already about oxytocin, which is the feel-good reward chemical released by our brains, the sort of opposite of adrenaline, when we do something good. Adrenaline is called the fight and flight chemical, and oxytocin is called the friend and befriend. And guess what? Women have more oxytocin in their brains ready to be released than men do, although men could probably improve that by using it more, which would mean more empathy, which would mean more caregiving, which would mean a better world. So, Dr. Helen Rice, Harvard Medical School, the neuroscience of empathy. There's hope, and the hope might just reside, just like all the negative impulses, in the human brain. And in closing, we have a word this week, as we always do, from another language. It's a word that takes many words more to say and to translate and to approximate the meaning of in English, where it's neatly disposed of in one word in its native language. The language here is Pasquanese, and it is the word tingo, which means to gradually steal all the possessions out of a neighbor's house by borrowing and just not returning. Tingo. And I think we've all experienced one or the other, or possibly both sides of that. Surreal. Time for another break, and when we come back, we'll be talking with the author of a brand new book that puts another face on refugees and immigrants, no matter how much we may have thought we already knew about them. This book is a startling and major work. We'll be right back. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My guest today, Helen Zia, is a writer, an award-winning journalist, and former executive editor of Ms. Magazine. Her essays and reviews have appeared in numerous publications, including The New York Times, The Washington Post, The Nation, Essence, The Advocate, and Out. She is the author of Asian American Dreams, The Emergence of an American People. The year 2000 was its publication, and it has been quoted by President Clinton in the Rose Garden on 2 separate occasions. She's also co-author with Wenho Lee of My Country versus Me, that was 2002, the story of the Los Alamos scientist falsely accused of being a spy for China in the, quote, worst case since the Rosenbergs. Her work on the Asian American landmark civil rights case of anti-Asian violence is documented in the Academy Award-nominated film Who Killed Vincent Chin? She is an expert fellow with University of Southern California's Justice and Journalism program of the Annenberg School of Journalism. She was writer-scholar in residence at New York University's Asian Pacific Institute. She received an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the Law School of the City University of New York, and she was the first recipient of the Suzanne Ahn Journalism Award for Civil Rights and Social Justice. A graduate of Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, and it goes on, but also you should know she worked as a construction worker, an auto worker, and a community organizer, after which finally she discovered her life's work as a writer, and she has a new and dynamite book out tomorrow called Last Boat Out of Shanghai, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Helen Zia. Oh, hello, Helen, and welcome back.
No, Robin, it's my honor to be here, and I've been so looking forward to this.
Yeah, full disclosure, listeners, we are old friends and old colleagues because we were together as editor and executive editor at Ms. Magazine, from whence all great feminists graduate at some point. So we've worked together there and at, oh my God, the Women's Media Center and many feminist projects for 20 years, more than 30 years, something like that.
Yeah, and all wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Helen has now written 12 years worth of labor and worth every day of it. It's an extraordinary contribution to American history, certainly to Chinese history, to the specifics of Asian American and Chinese American history, to women's history, and to smart people who are interested in understanding the human fallout from refugee crises, and the courage and real motivation behind emigres and refugees. This is the book for them. It's called Last Boat Out of Shanghai, and its subtitle is The Epic Story of the Chinese Who Fled Mao's Revolution. And epic it is. It's a big book. You can throw it at somebody who's trying to molest you sexually. It will be a very good weapon, but most importantly, it's a weapon against ignorance. Congratulations, Helen. You brought it off.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words.
Are you still in traction from having finally finished this epic work?
More in disbelief, let me just say. It's been a long haul, and it's just amazing that it's now about to, be in the world. And so it's, and probably like most authors, I'm nervous. Yeah, you should know because of the, dozens of books you've written.
But every time, every time it repeats. The nervousness, yeah. But well, you have no reason to be nervous. Pub date is tomorrow. How did this come to be written? I know, but the listeners don't know.
Well, so I grew up as a Chinese American girl, in the 50s and 60s when there were really not that many Chinese Americans from north of Guangdong province, north of Canton, what is now Guangzhou. And so my parents were from the Shanghai area, and many of their friends were. They speak a whole different dialect. And I grew up hearing their stories. And my Aunt Betty, would say, we escaped from Shanghai on the last boat. Uh-huh. And so I grew up hearing that, and that's all they would say. It's sort of the last boat out of Shanghai. And I knew that was some kind of serious thing. But as a kid, it didn't mean anything to me beyond that until, as I grew older, I met so many other people who would tell me that their loved ones, their parents, their cousins, their uncles left, and aunts left on the last boat out of Shanghai. And then I would ask them, oh, really, which boat? And they were all different. Or people would say, I left on the last train and the last plane, and just realizing this proverbial last boat, there must be something more to this, that everybody would feel in such a panic. And,
exactly.
And then when I heard more of my mother's story, I have to say, it just set me on this path, realizing that there was a missing history, that there was an exodus that took place. And I discovered that there was not a single book and not even a single dissertation in English about this exodus, this frantic, diaspora. That was a global diaspora that, it's very clear that it had a lot of impact on, global and U.S., China, and, inter-Asia relationships now, this diaspora. And why is it that it's so, they say understudied, but actually not studied? So I began to interview people, and then it just became more and more evident to me that there was a lot here and a lot to learn from about a generation that is leaving us. So I never thought it would take me 12 years, but I started it. And once I did, the people of this generation and what they had been through just captured me so much that I just had to keep going. I feel very devoted to them.
You've interviewed hundreds of people, both still in Shanghai and environs, and in China generally, and in the diaspora for this book, haven't you? Because the voices are so woven and the details are so generous and fine-tuned that you feel you're just there. I mean, I had heard that Shanghai had been this unusual city before colonialism, during, after, always sort of the Shanghaiese were either loved or hated for their specialness and the special energy of the city. But you make that come alive, and then so that it doesn't overwhelm the reader, you focus on 4 characters who actually were real people. I shouldn't say characters, but they're so fascinating. It's like fiction. Give a few sentences about each one.
Benny was a son of a very privileged family, in fact, a collaborator with the enemy. He was a Chinese man who worked with the Japanese enemy. And because of that, during the war, they lived, the beautiful life. But of course, we know that Japan lost the war, and then everything changed for him. And Bing was a girl who was abandoned not once, but twice because of the war. And she knew that she was left behind because she was a girl. And this is during wartime and occupation, and having to navigate that, what that means when you're 6 years old and your family leaves you somewhere. Ho was just the most brilliant science and math student in China, in a country school that was a one-room schoolhouse, but his intelligence was recognized and he was encouraged to go to school. And he ends up in Shanghai during the occupation and experiences that and becomes a student in the U.S. The goal of every, student in China to go to graduate school somewhere and then to bring that, that intellectual capital back.
Yeah.
And instead, he gets stuck in New York City during this time while his family is on the run, and he has no idea where they are. And then Anwa was the daughter of nationalists, the old regime nationalists. So they definitely had to leave, and she lived in the most patriarchal, suffocating circumstances while they were on the run. Just this little child who was very creative and smart, but squelched at every point that could happen. And they were leaving from Shanghai, which in a way was a character in this book too, because the one city that is most compared to with Shanghai is New York City. Mm-hmm. The character, the cosmopolitan nature, the international spirit and energy. And so these people all had to face fleeing from the one city that they loved and was their world. And where would they go? How would they live? But how could they stay? And so that's what these characters all had to face.
Future readers should know that definitely Helen is a strong feminist, which means, for a change, that the women characters in the book, the women, real women's real lives, get their fair shake. On the other hand, you're such a crack journalist. The journalistic eye is merciless. That said, the compassion toward those four really comes through. Critical where it has to be, but it's so moving because you're drawn into the individual terrors and fears and hopes. And then toward the end of the book, when you find out that being the child who was abandoned twice and has had this very difficult life in the New World, and pluckily continued on, it was your mother, is your mother.
Yes, well, and I have to say that was one of the, I guess, things that most inspired me to do this book, because I didn't learn my mother's story about her being abandoned until she was 74 years old. And up until then, it was a shameful secret that she had kept.
Oh.
And when, I would ask her, tell me about growing up as a girl in China. And her answer would be, oh, that was wartime, a very unhappy memory. And she would never talk about it. And I have to say that the more people I've interviewed, it's so clear that becoming a refugee, fleeing from a crisis where your life and your children's lives, and whether your children will ever live to feel freedom or peace, is so traumatic that so many people I talked to had never told their own children their stories. And I would actually say to them, haven't you told your kids? They really need to know. And they would say, no, I haven't. And so I was given a gift by my mother. She told me these stories, and then it spurred me on.
My God. That the victim should feel shamed by, what was done to them or what they were forced to do, leave their home, or is just absolutely breathtaking. I hope that people understand when they read this book. I don't think they can avoid it. The importance and the value of what refugees individually and collectively bring and contribute to the new country they come to, what it costs them emotionally, psychologically, everything being different. And all of that somehow comes through in the book, and yet on an epic scale. Also, I'd known that Shanghai was a sort of intellectual and political and cultural center. I just hadn't known it was that much of one. And we never hear that. We hear about the rape of Nanking. We hear about various other atrocities during the World War II. This is the first book about this subject. It's uncanny. It's incredible.
Well, I really did try to make it accessible, I guess, to American readers who don't know, or readers anywhere really, who don't know this about Shanghai or about China. And I mean, imagine if New York City was under enemy occupation and martial law, and people in neighborhoods were being starved out if they did not cooperate. And wouldn't people be thinking, how can I escape this? And what kind of exodus? But how could I leave my family or my friends or everything I know in New York? And, you know, the point you made, Robin, about the situation and the parallels of today, the whole lesson, I think, is one of the big takeaways I got from this book, is that these migrants and refugees, whether they were from Shanghai 70 years ago or today on the southern border of the U.S., I mean, they go through the most incredible suffering to end up somewhere where they are also going to continue to experience, you know, nativism, hatred, everything. But why are they doing this? And it's really, you know, for another generation, for the chance of surviving, because they can't survive where they are. And I would just say today is worse than 70 years ago. 70 years ago, the United States was under the, you know, McCarthy hysteria, the Cold War, and even then, J. Edgar Hoover and the INS did not separate parents from children.
I know.
My parents were going to be deported, and by using the Freedom of Information Act, I obtained some of their deportation records, and they were about to be deported, and the final judgment said, because they have some American citizen children, meaning me and my older brother, the hardship on the children, on these American citizens, would be too great. Therefore, we are not deporting you. Now, that was compassion at one of the deepest depths of American society. And yet, that was more compassionate than today under this administration. And that's a lesson.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, and because otherwise, how do you get that next generation? My God, it's only one generation between her having been abandoned repeatedly as a child and barely making it out, and then everything she went through in this country to this prize-winning journalist who writes the first book, a major breakthrough book on the subject of her, not her escape, but the context in which she happened to escape. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's the kind of thing that America at its most visionary can do. And that's the kind of way that most refugees and immigrants use it. And so the book,
right,
you know.
Absolutely. Well, that's absolutely true, Robin. And so the thing about it is the children of those immigrants have witnessed the incredible sacrifices. They know what their parents went through. And that's why over and over again, whether it's the Shanghai migrants that are the subject of my book, or immigrants and their children at any time, we see that these children and their parents are the most devoted to contributing something back to the society that accepted them. So instead of turning them away and calling them criminals and gang members and all whatever, you know, is thrown at them, really, these are the people who will most contribute to American society.
Helen, thank you for the 12 years writing this book. Thank you for the history that you've shared. It's like a trip into a major, long, 3-part, wonderful movie that you just you're kind of distressed when it ends because you've been in another entire world and you come out changed, really changed. Last Boat Out of Shanghai, the epic story of the Chinese who fled Mao's revolution, published by Random House tomorrow. Congratulations again. And thank you, Helen, for the friendship and the collegiality for almost 30 years, and for the fact that you put so much into this book, and it shows gloriously.
Oh, Robin, thank you so much. You don't know how much it means to me to hear my shiro, Robin Morgan, saying this. So thank you.
Right back at you. Time for our last break, And then I'll be right back with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
And we're back again with some fighting words. Patricia D'Alessandro Pelosi, age 78, married to the same man for more than 50 years, mother of 5 children, and grandmother of 8, may well be the most strategically brilliant leader since Elizabeth Tudor of England. Both women went into the family business, politics, although Thomas "Tommy" D'Alessandro, Jr., a Maryland congressman and then mayor of Baltimore, was not lethal to his one wife, unlike Henry VIII. Pelosi herself was the last of 6 children and the first daughter who had to negotiate herself out of family expectations that she would become a nun. An activist behind the scenes in local Democratic politics while raising her own kids, she then ran for and was elected to Congress from California in 1987 and has served ever since, posting landslide electoral victories and dropping beneath 80% of the vote only twice. She made history in being elected the first female Speaker of the United States House of Representatives in 2007, accepting the gavel while surrounded by invited children, serving in that post until 2011 when she became House Minority Leader. And this year she made history again, raising more funds for Democratic candidates to retake the House than anyone else, and later being re-elected to the speakership, the first woman ever to do that, and the first former speaker to return to the post since Sam Rayburn in 1955, and she again accepted the gavel, surrounded by children. She is a self-acknowledged feminist, a serious Roman Catholic, and a pro-choice activist for women's reproductive rights. She routinely wears 4-inch high-heeled shoes because she likes the way they look and because she knows height adds authority to her diminutive stature. She can stand on those heels for hours, smiling innocently with a wide-eyed expression while she tactically eviscerates her adversaries. This confuses some people. It has now confused Donald J. Trump. A lot. This most powerful elected, idealistic but pragmatic, woman in the United States history to date appears to be the first person, female or male, ever to paralyze Trump with a clear, flat-out, unmistakable no to his face. Others, mostly women, have certainly tried, and some succeeded in squirming away from his sexual assaults, while others could not. He never tried that with Nancy Pelosi, since he has some self-preservative reflexes. Besides, he likes his victims to be in their 20s or younger. Pelosi's no's are, however, far more dispiriting to Trump than any about sex. No, you may not have billions for your border wall. No, you must not hold the American people hostage in your fits of pique. No, we will stay here until you understand that we can negotiate border security only after you lift your government shutdown so Americans can get back to their lives again. No, you may not characterize me or my leadership strengths. No, you may not have a third basket of KFC chicken. Just kidding about the KFC, although apparently she has, in fact, expressed maternal concern about his constant inhalation of junk food. But the rest of the above no's are true. And every time she comes out of a meeting at the White House, she reportedly holds forth in her office and regales her staff and colleagues about what and how he said and acted. What part of no does he not understand? Meanwhile, like a wind-up toy that's hit a bump in the carpet, he keeps trying, thinking that if he just bullheadedly batters away at the wall that is Nancy Pelosi, he can dent it. He's tried threats, chicanery, offers of candy, his version of manufactured charm, and proudly shutting down the United States. He gets back only cool politeness, dignity, and no. He reportedly stalks the White House halls, collaring hapless aides and yelling, "Why can't I get a deal?" He tried to woo freshman Democrats who had never been to the White House with an invitation, but eager to visit the White House as they all may have been, under friendly advice from their own Democratic leader, her heels clicking on the marble floors of Congress as she walked to meet them, they all answered Trump with a polite no. He threatens to call a national state of emergency and would gladly do so, except for advisers warning him that she will just take him to court. He's like Bluebeard strangling in his own facial hair. She never lifts her voice, even when she's been up for so many hours, holding her caucus together with impeccable discipline that she gets slightly glassy-eyed. There's no more ante for him to up. And then she strikes, with a move so brilliant that even Republicans who denounce her as a latte liberal gasp in admiration of her parliamentary skills when they're cornered by reporters. She knows her Constitution. She knows her Robert's Rules of Orders. She knows that the Speaker of the House, second in line to the presidency directly after the Vice President, has considerable powers. Unlike Trump, she doesn't invent other powers, but deftly wields those legally available to her. She knows that although a presidential State of the Union address is traditionally delivered in person in the House, a larger chamber than the Senate, originally the address was sent to Congress on paper. She also knows that a State of the Union speech is the one occasion where all three co-equal branches of government are assembled in one room: the executive, with both the president, vice president, and cabinet in attendance; the judiciary, with all 9 justices of the Supreme Court; and the legislative, with both houses present. Plus the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all foreign ambassadors to the United States, honored guests, and a massive global audience on television and online. Most importantly, she knows that members of the House are permitted lifelong entry to the House and Senate, and that representatives are likewise permitted lifelong entry to both houses. She also knows that the President of the United States is, however, not permitted to visit either chamber unless specifically invited by the leadership of that chamber. So she politely disinvited Trump to her house. She wrote him a courteous letter suggesting that he not deliver the address in person so long as his government shutdown was in effect. She suggested that he could lift the shutdown and then come and speak, or, failing that, he could deliver the speech from the Oval Office or somewhere else, or he could send it to Congress in writing. To make sure no one could mistake this brilliant move as a mere partisan gambit, she gave her reason for the disinvitation, and it has the virtue of being a sensible, simple, real reason. The audience for this event is the single most difficult and delicate security matter of any year. Protecting so many dignitaries, moving through the city to one destination, remaining there from 2 to 4 hours, then leaving in a crush to disperse, that's a nightmarish challenge for Capitol security, for the Secret Service, the FBI, the Washington, D.C. police force, the military, and all other attendant law enforcement, many of whom, being government employees, are on forced furlough or layoff because of Trump's government shutdown. So no. Touché. Now is the moment to sit back and dwell on the sheer beauty of this strategy. Examine it from every angle. Appreciate how inescapable it is. Admire its elegance. Notice its tone of nonviolence, yet recognize its quiet, unassuming strength. Comprehend its wit. Acknowledge its power. I'm tempted to say that it is quintessentially a female tactic. manipulation rather than confrontation. But I have to concede that it would not be impossible for a very wise male leader to use it. Well, at first there was only silence, not a peep, not a tweet from the White House in response to Pelosi's letter. But we knew that if Trump was upset before, he must now be hitting the elaborate White House ceilings. He feeds on audience response, and in the Capitol there would be enough Republicans to dutifully provide at least some of that. In the Oval Office there would be a couple of his aides and the camera operator. No applause, no standing and clapping in homage to him, no glad-handing and sycophantic praise on his way in or out of the chamber. Only that bucket of KFC upstairs in the private quarters waiting for him as his sole reward. Then he hit back with an unwittingly hilarious parry and a thrust that went limp. He wrote to Pelosi that he will deny military transport, quote, for an 8-day excursion she had planned to make to Egypt, Afghanistan, and Brussels, postponing that until the shutdown was over and suggesting that if she still wanted to go, she should just take commercial aircraft. The problem with his proposal is its breathtaking ignorance that, 1, nobody goes to Afghanistan or even Egypt these days for vacation fun. 2, Brussels is where the headquarters of NATO are, plus ancillary headquarters of the United Nations. 3, Pelosi would not have been traveling alone, but would have been leading a bipartisan congressional delegation. 4, the delegation would have been meeting with troops and commanders in Afghanistan and trying to repair the grave damage Trump has done to the U.S. relationship with NATO in Brussels. 5, the delegation never planned to go to Egypt at all. 6, publicly announcing in advance details of a journey of any government official to an active war zone like Afghanistan is a grave violation of security. Pelosi sent Trump a brief reply, oozing the calm disapproval of a nursery school teacher chiding a tot that he must take a time out now for going pee-pee in the potted plant. In that tone, Pelosi informed Trump of the above facts. Meanwhile, Politico reports that Senator Rand Paul and Representative Mo Brooks both suggested that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell invite Trump to deliver the speech in the Senate. But apparently McConnell would desperately like to stay out of it, and a letter Brooks circulated has so far garnered the support of only 10 co-sponsors in both houses, all hardcore, hard right. So, no, the petty denial of military aircraft to a congressional delegation will not get him his wall. No, he only looks foolish, and it was a woman who made him look foolish. And besides, he made more enemies for himself among Republicans in Congress into the bargain. No, Donald, no. You better give in to a superior intelligence. Lift the shutdown you were going to be so proud of having imposed. Sign the bipartisan agreement about the border you had said you would sign and then reneged on. Give up your stupid wall and go eat some KFC. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.